So welcome to the Pandio Learning Series on Apache Pulsar. My name is Matt Rawl. Today I'm very glad to welcome Kevin Way, a senior client architect with Pandio, and we want to talk about data pipelines. What is a data pipeline? How have data pipelines evolved over the last 20 years? And then we're going to take a look kind of into the future and kind of what's happening in terms of the applications that is changing the requirements for data pipelines moving forward. So Kevin, let's start at the beginning. If you look back kind of a little bit earlier in your career, what were data pipelines used for, and talk about maybe an example or two from kind of your experience.
Sure. Well, let's first just generalize a definition so everyone knows what we're talking about. For today's discussion, data pipeline is just sending data from one place to another. You need system A talking to system B. How do you do it? Sending data. Back in the day, that was pretty complex. There weren't really even protocols for transmitting data. You would need to know the physical address of the other system. You would connect directly to a system. It would be a one-to-one transfer. You'd define what you were sending. The other side would have to know. There was a lot of manual work, and obviously it did not scale at all. That was the original bit. Maybe a sort of a second generation, once they saw that machines and networks were going to be a thing. We had remote procedure calls and systems like Corba. There became protocols and ways to communicate across the network. And that was really generation 1 and 1.5.
Okay. So moving from there to kind of the advent of microservices, service-oriented architecture, how did the requirements for a data pipeline change?
Well, once we got to that step, there was an internet and a network and a means of communicating that was much easier. So you don't have to focus on communicating anymore. You focus on doing the work. The first attempt at solving that problem was APIs, whether it's a REST API or something else. One system defined an API, another system communicated via that API, and that was it. It was usually one-sided. It wasn't a back and forth communication. And then once that took off, it became the microservices concept that you're talking about now that's really exploded over the last, say, 5 to 8 years, where instead of just using a network to communicate, or here's an API, go give me this data that I'm asking for, you can tell a system to do something, right? And it can either respond or not. Maybe you're requesting something, it can do work and return it to you, or it does something else to another system. It was less the infrastructure change and more the conceptual change in this generation, defining APIs to what you can use an API for, if that makes sense.
Okay. So now, obviously, there's a lot of hype and a lot of talk around machine learning and AI, and it seems there's going to be a lot of different kinds of demands on, what you've called a data pipeline. So give the listeners a little bit of a feel about, what those changes might look like.
Sure. Well, the biggest difference there is the data itself. You don't have to know anything about machine learning or AI to understand that world involves lots and lots of information. So you're sending massive amounts of data across a network or pipe. We just previously talked about a REST API or any API, or that's really a communication. Go give me this thing. It's a really small bit of data. It's a small request, or you're sending something to someone and it's usually a small bit of information. Go convert this, go do something with this. That didn't really deal with data. With AI and ML, it's massive amounts of data that machines need to learn on. And that's the biggest change, is how do I send all of this information? How do I send it quickly? How do I not lose any of it? And then how do I process it quickly? And we're solving that at Pandio with Pulsar.
Okay, fantastic. I think that's a great kind of primer on data pipelines. And in subsequent sessions, we'll dive a little bit deeper on how Apache Pulsar really is the right pipeline for machine learning. Thanks, Kevin.
Sure.